Welcome to the session. We were discussing about process management. We have seen the process management and CPU scheduling in the last sessions. So this is the second module, the last topic, the second module, that is process synchronization. This is Pradeep Kumar from Department of CSE, IJIT Mangaluru. So we are covering under process synchronization, we are trying to cover the background, and we'll look after this critical section problem. We have a Peterson solutions with synchronization hardware, semaphore, and some of the classic problems of synchronization, and then monitors. So these are the topics we are going to cover under this process synchronization. The background. So as we know, when we discuss the process management, so two different types of possibilities when we have the concurrent access between the shared data. So the concurrent access to shared data may result in data inconsistency. So we have seen this particular scenario in our previous session. So where the same data can be shared by the two processes. So either process P0, consider the two processes P0 and P1. So process P0 may generate some data. So that is should be loaded in a particular memory location. So from that particular same memory location, process P1 may access and consume the data. So that is how shared data. One thing. Second part is the same memory location, both the processes may consume the data and produce some output. So that is the possibility. So concurrent access to the shared data may result in data inconsistency. So at the same time, two or more processes trying to access this particular shared data. So then it will result in data inconsistency, because two or more processes may access, may modify the data, and again they may store the same data in the shared memory location. So then it will result in a data inconsistency. So maintaining data consistency requires a dedicated mechanism to ensure the orderly execution of cooperating processes. So we saw what is cooperating processes. Cooperating processes are nothing but they may share the same information, they may share the memory location, they may pass the information from one process to another process in a synchronized manner. So to deal with this kind of scenario, a proper mechanism is required to maintain the data consistency. Suppose that we wanted to provide a solution to the consumer producer problem that fills all the buffers. So we saw consumer producer problem. The producer produces the data, and that particular produced data has been loaded in a buffer. So there were two types of buffers. One is fixed size and one is variable. So there is two scenarios. So if it is a fixed size, the same amount, if it is a 5 KB of size buffer, then the producer will fill that particular 5 KB, and then the consumer is supposed to take that particular 5 KB. If it is variable length buffer size, then sometimes it may be 1 KB, 10 MB, 1 gigabytes. So that is variable length. So now to provide the solution for this particular scenario, consumer producer scenario, so we can have an option that is to fill all the buffers. Consider a situation, we can have an integer count that keeps track of the number of full buffers. So it's the counter's job is to count the full buffers starting from 0. So initially we will initialize the particular variable, integer variable, that is count set to 0. Then it is incremented by 1 by the producer itself. After it produces a new buffer, and it is decremented by the consumer after it consumes the buffer. This is the scenario now. So whenever the producer produces some data, once that particular data, producer data, is filled by the particular buffer, automatically the producer will increment the counter by 1. On the other side, whenever the consumer receives that particular data or takes that particular, consumes that particular data from the buffer, then the consumer's job is to decrement that particular counter, saying that whatever the data is produced by the producer, that is consumed by the consumer. So this is the scenario now. So how we can implement this? So here you can see small code snippet to implement that producer. with the counter. So produce an item and put in next produced. So the loop counter equal to buffer size, it must be matched. So till here supposed to do this particular step. So whenever the buffer is filled with the result by the producer, and if it is less than the buffer size, if it is less than the buffer size, counter must be incremented by 1, counter plus plus. This is what the scenario that we told. So whenever the producer produces the data size must be less than the buffer size or equal to buffer size, then only it will fill that particular buffer. Then the counter is incremented by 1. On the other side, the consumer's job is to, consumer will check whether you have the counter is incremented already. The count, that means if the counter is having some value, that means it will have some value in that buffer. So using this next consumed, it will take out this buffer value, and the buffer value or the data from the buffer, that should be the similar to the buffer size itself by default, and counter must be decremented by 1. On the other hand, consume the item in next consumed. Whatever the data is available in this buffer, that is consumed by the consumer. So after consuming, or whenever the particular information from this particular buffer is consumed, automatically the counter must be decremented by 1. So that is a consumer's situation now. So now to do this scenario, there is simultaneously producer may produce the data, consumer may consume that particular data. So now consider a scenario, the race condition. So this race condition is a special scenario in which 2 or more processes are trying to consume the data, or more than 2 processes trying to consume same data. Then the situation is race condition. That is, several processes access and manipulate the same data concurrently at the same time. So we'll see the example over here, and the outcome of the execution depends on the particular order in which the access takes place. Consider the scenario here: S0, S1, S2, S3, S4, S5. So producer executes a register, and the counter is incremented by 1, saying that producer is produced some data. On the other side, consumer executes the register by decrementing the value. Same thing. So only one register has been updated. So now two or more processes are accessing the same data. So now those 2 processes are in race to access the counter, because counter is a variable. The same variable must be upgraded by both the producer and consumer, right? So that is, both processes, both producers and consumers are in a race to access the data from the counter, either to increment or to the decrement. On the other hand, if you take a general example, consider a situation in your home. You have 2 switches that will connect to a particular light. 2 different switches. So whenever you press any one switch, automatically the light will glow, the light will on. For both the switches, there only one connection you have. Now the scenario is 2 people at your home, if they run towards the switchboard and they will switch on simultaneously at the same time both the switches. So what will be the scenario now? So now those 2 people are in race to switch on. The result may be very terrific. Either short circuit may happen or some other things may happen. Otherwise your bulb or light may go off or something will happen. So this is the race condition. So now I guess you understood. So over here in this particular scenario, producers and consumers are trying to access the same data, same variable. So to address this, or to avoid this particular scenario, we are supposed to ensure only one process at a time can be manipulating variable or data. So only one process supposed to access the particular data, so that we can have a clear data at hand. So to provide the clear-cut solution, we have something called critical section, the critical section problem. Consider a system of n processes, P0, P1 up to Pn minus 1. So each process has a critical section segment of code. So out of n number of lines of code under a particular process, so some part of code may be treated as critical section. So that is the major, on the other hand, we can say heart or major part or major logic in your program, the logic part, exact logic part. So that is a critical section. So process may be changing common variables, updating table, writing a file. So these are the things may happen during the execution. Say sometimes the common variables may change those values, what are the variables we use in the program. So based on that, based on the line by line execution, the value may differ. Or if you are making use of any table, lookup table, then the updating table may happen, and sometimes writing into file or reading from file. So these are the possibilities may happen due to the process. So now when one process in critical section, so we supposed to guarantee in such a way that no other may be in its critical section, no other processes in its critical section. So that is a guarantee we supposed to give, saying that whenever one process is in execution, is in its critical section, at the same time or at that time, no other process can enter into the critical section. So that is a scenario. So critical section problem is to design protocol to solve this kind of scenarios. So each process must ask permission to enter critical section in the entry section. So say for example, we may divide entire process code into segment into entry section, critical section, exit section, and remainder section. So whenever a particular process wanted to access a particular critical section, then it should ask permission, must ask permission to enter critical section in entry section. So entry section is something like a gatekeeper. So whatever the process wanted to access the critical section should ask the permission with this gatekeeper, that is entry section. Then once whichever the process is under critical section, whether it turn completes, then it will follow the critical section with the exit section, then the remainder section. So now this particular scenario is a little bit challenging with the preemptive kernels. So preemptive in the sense, if there is an interrupt, there is a priority has been occurred, highest priority has been entered into the queue, automatically it should give a permission to execute that higher priority process. So that is preemptive. So non-preemptive, it is not allowing to perform. Okay, so now we'll see that critical section. So this is the scenario now. So here you can see entry section, critical section, exit section, and remainder section. So we can divide this entire process into this particular part. So the scenario is critical section problem. The scenario is no two processes can access this particular critical section part simultaneously at the same time. So that's why, so whichever the process wanted to access this critical section, they must register over here entry section. That is to get the permission to enter this. On the other hand, the backend, so whatever the process is in the critical section, it must complete its execution. Then only it will give access to the newcomer. So once it finishes its execution, the current process may move to the exit section, and then so on. So that is how critical section problem is. So this is the general structure of a typical process PI. So now to perform any access under this, so initially all the processes should register, should make entries in this entry section. Then one by one, based on the priority or based on the queue, it will have its own turn. to have an execution under critical section. Then it moves to the exit section, then reminder section. So why with this reminder section is sometimes higher priority may be based on the preemptive. So that it will allow the process to be preempted while it is running in the kernel mode. So during such cases, we can make use of this reminder section. Okay. So in this case, we may have the three scenarios. One is mutual exclusion, second one is progress, third one is bounded waiting. So over here, what is mutual exclusion? If process PI is executing in its critical section, then no other processes can be executing in their critical section. So that is mutual exclusion. So whenever a particular process is executing in its critical section, on the other hand, whenever a particular process is making use of one particular data, at the same time, no other process can have the same data. That is what the meaning of this mutual exclusion. So once the previous process, say process PI done with its critical section, then only the PI plus 1 can enter into the critical section. So that is mutual exclusion. Second part is progress. If no process is executing in its critical section and there exist some processes that may wish to enter their critical section, then the selection of the processes that will enter the critical section next cannot be postponed indefinitely. Saying that, so we saw in the previous case, in this case, whichever the process wanted to make entry within this critical section, they're supposed to register over here to get the pass. So now, the first one is mutual exclusion, saying that whenever one process, say process PI executing in critical section, so that no other process can enter into the critical section, that is mutual exclusion. Second one is progress. That means no processes are executing currently or present, not executing under critical section, but there are number of processes in this entry section in the queue. So now, based on the entry and based on the priority, only one process can be given chance to access critical section or given getting into the execution for this one critical section. So now during that particular period, you can't postpone the selection. So which particular process should enter into this? So on the other hand, you may set a priority, we may set a priority or a time bound, timeout period for those processes. So these are any one of the possibility we may set up. So that is progress. Third one is bounded waiting. A bound must exist on the number of times that other processes are allowed to enter their critical section. So first one is, first part we can divide this bounded waiting. So the first part is we should have a bound in such a way that it's nothing but a counter. We're supposed to make proper counter entries that other processes are allowed to enter their critical sections after a process has made a request to enter its critical section and before that request is granted. So we're supposed to maintain a clear-cut limit or bound on number of times that other processes are allowed to enter into critical section. So based on that, we can give a chance to the next request. So now how to decide that one? We may assume. So assume that each process executed at a non-zero speed. So once a particular process may take say up to say 3 to 4 entries already made. So then the next process may getting into the turn for its critical execution. That is one thing. Second part is no assumption concerning relative speed of the n processes. That means we can set up the proper time bound, proper limit, proper speed for the execution. So that is no assumption, relative speed by taking an average. So now we have a solution for this, that is Peterson's solution. The solution says, it is when we say Peterson's solution, is nothing but a software based solution. It addresses the requirements of processes. This addresses the requirements of these three: mutual exclusion, progress, and bounded waiting. Mutual exclusion means if whenever a particular process PI is executing in its critical section, no other process can enter. Progress in the sense, if a particular process, if no process are executing critical section, based on the entry in that process under entry section, we can make a selection to execute in critical section. Bounded waiting, a proper limit or bound can be set up to execute the critical section for each processes. So we have a solution for this one using a software or software based solutions. So now it is a two process solution, right? The critical executing in critical section is nothing but two process solution. So load and store, in general we know load and store are different cases. So the load instruction, if you consider load and store as a different instruction, load will be treated as the data might be loaded from the memory. Store in the sense data is supposed to store it in the memory. So now consider a situation, load and store are atomic. That is, there is no interruption between these two. So it is a single instruction. Treat this as a single instruction, load and store. That means it is a single instruction saying that it is atomic. You can't divide, cannot be divisible. You cannot separate load and store. That is, cannot be interrupted. Now, the two processes share two variables. Consider two processes, it will share the two variables. Say turn and flag. Turn and flag. So flag, there is a boolean, either true or false. Turn will have an indicator for a variable to identify the individual processes, that is to be entered into the critical section. So turn is a variable, integer variable. It will have a process ID. So it will decide, it will indicate whose turn to enter into the critical section. So the variable turn indicates whose turn it is to enter the critical section. And what it will flag will have boolean values. The flag array is used to indicate if a process is ready to enter the critical section, either true or false. The particular process should be ready to enter. On the other hand, process should be ready with its resources. So that is Peterson's solution. So now, how to implement this? The algorithm goes like this. Initially, the flag must be true, saying that our process is ready to enter the critical section, and then turn equal to j. So that is the PID, process ID. So these two values must be same. So both should have true values, flag of j and turn equal to j. So flag of j in the sense, so whichever the process wanted to enter the critical section, that should have true, that should be ready, and the next turn should be the same process turn, then it can enter critical section. Otherwise false, supposed to move back to the counter and update the counter, come again. So this is how Peterson's solution works. So now using this particular situation, we may prove that mutual exclusion is preserved so that no other process can enter when one process under critical execution, critical section. Progress requirement is satisfied because it is set by this turn and flag variables, and bounded waiting requirement is met because we set up the counter over here, right? So all these three are met under this Peterson's solution or Peterson's algorithm for process PI. So any clarification so far? Okay, so far now we discussed different software perspective to manage with critical section. So now moving on to the hardware part. And coming to the hardware part, so many systems provide hardware support for critical section code. Some So many systems, in the sense, some maybe like a uniprocessors, only single processor. It could disable the interrupt. Directly, it will disable the interrupt, and it will provide the chance for currently running code would execute without preemption. Only one process can execute. So the interrupt is disabled, nobody can seek permission because you have only one processor, uniprocessor. So in this case, what happens is the situation goes a little bit worse because it is too inefficient on multiprocessor systems as well. Because operating systems using this not broadly scalable. So what to do with this? We are supposed to have a special atomic hardware instructions. That is what we discussed in the previous case. Load and store should be atomic instruction. So that is, we should have an atomic instruction, hardware instruction, that is non-interruptible instruction by the hardware. So we can have this either test memory word and a set value, or we can have a swap also, swap the contents of two memory words. So this is the possibility to do with the atomic hardware instruction. So how it looks. So the situation should be like this. First, acquire the lock so that nobody else can enter into the critical section. And whenever a particular process, say PI, acquired lock, its process PI's job is to execute under critical section. And then once the execution is over, then that particular process PI will release the lock. Then the next process, P1, P2, P3, and so on. So this is how critical section problem using locks solution for the critical section problem using locks. This is the one scenario. Second one is we can go with the test and set instruction. This is what we discussed, test and set. We can have both the test and set with the Boolean, that is target value. So over here we can have, whenever the target is true, then we may give a permission to execute with the test and set. So either test memory word and set value. So any one, or swap, is supposed to swap it. So swapping will happen in like this. So over here, shared Boolean variable lock initializes to false. Over here, what happened? Test and set, that is lock has been enabled, so that it entered into the critical section. When this is false, that is when the lock has been released, automatically the next process will continue its execution with the critical section. So the swapping will happen based on the processor's entry. To perform this swapping, mutual exclusion can be provided as a one particular, say a global variable, say for example A, can be declared and initialized to false. And each process has a local Boolean variables. So whenever that is met, automatically it has been swapped. This is how it works for a critical section problem. So how we can give a solution? So now key equal to true, that means the one particular process can enter and it obtained the lock, so that that particular process can utilize this critical section for its execution. When this particular execution is over, till the lock will be released, automatically the next swapping with the next process, the second process will come into the picture. Second process will make use of this lock. Whenever the lock is with the second process, the second process continue its execution under the critical section. Once it is done, lock will be released, then again swap with the next process, and so on. So this is how solution using swap. We can have this bounded waiting mutual exclusion with the test and set also. So bounded waiting is nothing but you're supposed to have a proper clear-cut limit for each of the processes. So that is, we'll see the snippet. Waiting equal to true. The one process is waiting now. so that we can set that particular key to that particular process so that that particular process can enter into the section. So whenever, so this waiting or both are true, then we'll give you the lock using test and set. The lock can be given to the particular process I. So once it gets, it will enter into the critical section. Then supposed to check whether it still under critical section. If it is yes, then apply wait. Wait till when? Till the time bound completes. Whenever the time bound reaches, automatically the lock must be released and the next process will get into the critical section. So there is mutual exclusion under bounded waiting. So with respect to bounded waiting, we are supposed to set the limit for execution under critical section. So any clarification so far? Any doubt or clarification? Actually, hardware-based solution for this critical section problem usually a little bit inefficient and it is troublesome also because of its complexity. So generally, operating systems or generally operating system designers may build a dedicated software tool to solve this critical section problem. And solution for this critical section problem is also called a synchronization tool. So this synchronization tool is also called as semaphore. Semaphore is nothing but it is a software tool designed by operating system designers to solve critical section problem in a synchronized manner. That is semaphore. So synchronization tool that does not require busy waiting. In general, consider semaphore S as an integer variable. So in this case, we have two standard operations that will modify S, that is wait and signal. Originally, it is called P and V. So it is very less complicated and can only be accessed via two indivisible operations. Indivisible, that is atomic. That is what we discussed, right, in the previous case. So now, how it works? First, wait is initialized with the S, and when a particular process is under wait state, automatically the previous other one will get the access and it is incremented. So the guarantee is that no two processes can execute wait because S is already in a wait so that nobody can enter and then the signal on the semaphore at the same time. The same time, on the same time, no two processes can execute wait and signal. So that should be, we should give a guarantee in such a way that no two processes can execute wait and signal on the same semaphore at the same time. So now how it works? How it works? By counting semaphores. In general, counting semaphore is nothing but it is an integer value. It can range over an unrestricted domain. So either we have a binary semaphore. Binary semaphore is nothing but it will have a value either 0 or 1. So integer value can range only between 0 and 1 and can be simpler to implement. It's also known as mutex locks. So can implement a counting semaphore S as a binary semaphore to provide a mutual exclusion. So in this case, value will only range from 0 to 1 or either 0 or 1. So how to do that? We'll have an index. So semaphore mutex, that is initialized to 1 initially. Then whenever the value of semaphore, that is however a semaphore value, this is nothing but an integer. Whenever this particular integer value is 1, by default it is entered into the wait state, saying that one particular process is under critical section, and at the same time it will, once it is done with the critical section, it will continue with the signal with the same value, that is 1. Then it moves to the remainder section and so on. On the other hand, whenever a particular semaphore is set to the value 1, only one process can enter into this one, into wait state, and that is executed in a critical section and with the same signal, so that no two processes can enter at the same time. So that is the scenario behind this semaphore with binary, that is binary values. That is binary semaphore for you. Consider a situation. Consider two concurrent running processes. Say process P1 and P2. Initially, process P1 getting into the execution. So signal, however, the process should be given with the 1 value because it is a binary semaphore. So whenever process P1 is entered into this particular scenario, same process P1 should be in critical section and even in signal also. So that is, once it completes the critical section execution, then only it moves to the signal. So that is the binary semaphore. So any other processes that tries to enter its critical section, so it must move back and must loop continuously in the entry code. So now, how we can implement this? So must guarantee that no two processes can execute wait and signal on the same semaphore at the same time. This is what we discussed. Thus, implementation becomes critical section problem where the wait and signal code are placed in the critical section, so that we can have both situation in the critical section only. So now what will happen? The busy waiting could now have busy waiting in critical section implementation, right? Because we included both as a single atomic instruction, wait and signal. So it is easier, but implementation code is short, little bit busy waiting if critical section rarely occupied. So note that applications may spend lots of time in critical sections, and therefore this is not a good solution. So because when a particular process is engaged with its critical section execution, others may supposed to wait for a longer period, because the line, the particular counter will be busy waiting, because already some process in busy waiting in the critical section, as it is a single or atomic instruction. So that is the scenario. That's why it is not a good solution. So now, to have this better solution for this waiting, so we can implement semaphore with no busy waiting. That is, with each semaphore, there is an associated waiting queue. We're supposed to set up with the queue, waiting queue. So each entry in a waiting queue has two data items. So that is value and pointer to the next record. So value is nothing but type of integer. It is a type integer. The value of that particular queue, the variable, that is that particular entry data, and then pointer to the next record in the list. This is to be maintained in the waiting queue. So now, according to this particular queue scenario, we can apply two operations. So block and wake up. The block operation places the process invoking the operation on the appropriate waiting queue. So it will block that particular operation in such a way that the process invoking the operation on appropriate waiting queue, it will place that particular process, place the particular process in the waiting queue, so that it will have its own value. And in the next line, it will move to the next level. Second operation is wake up. So remove one of processes in the waiting queue and place it in the ready queue. Once it's done with that, place it in the ready queue. So that is wake up. So block and wake up. Block is nothing but allocating. Wake up is nothing but removing. Once one allocation is over, the second one should be, the previous one should be removed from the queue. So remove one of the process in the waiting queue and place it in the ready queue. So this is a solution with no busy waiting, because every individual process supposed to wait in the ready queue and waiting queue. So every individual process will have some value in the queue. So this is one of the solution for busy waiting. So how we can implement this implementation of wait? Wait, that is semaphore with integer value. So we supposed to assign the value from the queue, that is s equal to value. So because whenever one particular process is allocated with the waiting queue, automatically it is decremented the next entry should be given chance for the next attempt. So now if s, the value of s is less than 0, then supposed to add the process to the list, then block it. So on, same thing should be repeated under wait queue. So once this is ready, then you're supposed to apply signal queue. Signal is nothing but supposed to give a chance to access the critical section. So when the signal is ready, the signal queue is ready, then the value is incremented by 1. If the value is incremented by 1, then we're supposed to remove a process from the list. One process should be removed from the queue. So when we say queue, it is first in, first out. So first in, say we have a P1 and P2 processes. P1 process already in a queue and P2 process also already in the queue. So it's P1's turn to have a critical section. So P1 will enter the critical section. Automatically the value will be decremented by 1. So now the pointer is moved to the next, that is P2, so that P2 will have the access. So how to remove? Use this one. Use a signal. Remove a process P from list. So one process should be kept out from the list because it is already utilized critical section. This is how we can implement it. And here we can have a deadlock scenario also. So deadlock and starvation. So deadlock is nothing but two or more processes are waiting indefinitely for an event that can be caused by only one of the waiting processes. The scenario. Two or more processes are waiting indefinitely at the same time for an event to occur. So when this particular event will occur, it is caused because of the waiting process only. Consider a scenario P0 and P1. S and Q with two semaphores initialized to 1. So initially P0 in waiting period, P1 is also in waiting period, P0 with the Q, P1 with the wait S. So this is continuous because two or more processes are waiting indefinitely over here. Two or more processes are waiting in the queue. So initially P0 with wait, P0 with wait Q, P1 with the Q, P8 with S. Right, the continuation. So now because of this particular blockage, it is also called as starvation. There is a process may never be removed from the semaphore queue in which it is suspended. So because it very difficult to remove it because it is not served, doesn't enter the critical section to execute its turn. Right. So that's why it is in the indefinite blocking. It will fall into the starvation, saying that keep on waiting in that particular queue. Because a single process cannot be removed out of this particular queue so that the next may continue with its execution. So now to avoid this particular scenario, we may have a priority inversion scheduling problem. We may have a priority setup. So in this case, priority inversion can scheduling problem when lower priority process holds lock needed by higher priority process. So we can include this priority for individual processes. So again over here, we can have a scheduling problem also. That is when lower priority process holds the lock. When lower priority process holds the lock. At that time, maybe higher priority process may needed the lock to for its execution. So that is one of the situation may happen, may occur if we include priority also. But this again can be solved via using priority inheritance protocol. Priority inheritance protocol. Using that priority inheritance protocol, we can address deadlock and starvation. So this is a solution for that. So now coming to the classical problems of synchronization. These are the various kinds of problems may happen during this process synchronization. So this will use it to, these are the problems used to test newly proposed synchronization schemes. We have bounded buffer problem, we have readers and writers problem, and dining philosophers problem. So there are three major classical problems we have with its read and write. There is bounded buffer, readers and writers problem, and dining philosophers problem. So we'll see one by one. Bounded buffer problem. Any clarification so far? In bounded buffer problem, we have readers, however, right? So initially, we supposed to move with the, we supposed to provide the permission to access multiple readers at the same time. So multiple readers can be given the permission to access a buffer. Consider there is a situation, there are n buffers. Each can hold one item at a time. So we have n buffers and each can hold one item at a time. So now, if we have n number of readers, if you give access to this, then it is a bounded buffer problem. That is, so only one single writer can access the shared data at the same time. There is a scenario. Only one particular writer can access the shared data. So that's why we can initialize semaphore mutex with the value 1, saying that only one person can have a permission to read the data. And semaphore full will be initialized to 0. Why? Because nobody else can enter. So once it is done, once that particular sharing has been done, then the semaphore empty initialized to the value n. That is for the next reader. That is bounded buffer problem. So when we have number of buffers and number of readers, but the situation is only one can hold one particular item out of that particular buffer, so that we supposed to give a chance for one particular semaphore to initialize with the value 1, so that it will access that particular set of values. Once it is done, we supposed to move to the next. So give access to the next in this bounded buffer problem. So how to implement this? Consider a situation. Produce an item. Already produced an item. So now when the item is produced, weight is empty and weight is mutex. So initially, if the weight is empty, then we supposed to give a chance to access that particular data, whatever the data produced in the previous case. That's why mutex is set to 1. So in this here we have said, discussed like semaphore mutex initialized to the value 1. So now what happens is, whenever this particular weight of 1 has been available, then add the item to the buffer. Only when it receives the value, then supposed to add the item to the buffer. Then supposed to release the signal mutex, that is 1. Same thing is supposed to repeat for n number of buffers. There is only one process, only one producer can produce the data and fill it into the buffer in each time. So that is bounded buffer problem. On the other side, the consumer, initially consumer is waiting for that weight is full. So weight mutex, that is 1. So one particular consumer can access the data. So that is remove an item from buffer to the next. We're supposed to remove that particular data from the buffer, and we're supposed to update the counter to the next consumer, to the next consumer, to the next consumer. That is by providing signal, that is mutex, until this particular mutex will have semaphore mutex is having the value 1. It can, the consumer can remove an item, and the chance is given to the next consumer in the next attempt, consume the item in the next level. This should be repeated on the consumer side as well. So in the previous case, producer side, producer will produce an item. Whenever a process is entered into the queue, automatically the semaphore's value will be initialized to 1. As we said initially, semaphore's value set to 1. Then whenever this value is set to 1, then is supposed to write into the buffer. Whatever the data is already produced, it is written to the buffer. At that time, the signal will be given saying that nobody else can enter into the critical section. That is producer side. On the other side, receiver side, when the mutex is having the value 1, it can remove an item from the buffer and it will give a chance to the next buffer in the next term. So remove an item from the buffer. So in both cases should be 1. So once it receives the value from the buffer, then it will make a signal to the empty, and so on. That is how it is repeated. That is bounded buffer problem solution for the synchronization. So that process synchronization can take place using this bounded buffer, because only one process will be given access to the critical section, to the data. And coming to the readers writers problem. Consider a data set. A single data set is shared among a number of concurrent processes. So when we say a single data set is shared, there may be n number of readers. Readers only read the data set. They do not perform any update. So reader's job is to read the data. There may be n number of readers. And writers. Writer's job is to can both read and write. So the writer will perform both read operation and write operation. So now the scenario is, problem is, you allow multiple readers to read at the same time. Only one data set is available. You give a chance to read to the multiple readers to access the same data set at the same time. Right? It is very difficult. So only one single writer can access the shared data at the same time. So this is what we supposed to do. On the other hand, when we have a n number of processes that is given access to the shared data, then there is a chance of data inconsistency, because over here also n number of readers are trying to access one single data set. But the actual scenario is only one single writer can access the shared data at the same time. So now how to do this particular scenario? So we're supposed to have several variations of how readers and writers are treated. That is via providing priorities or privileges. To give a solution to this one, we can have this kind of scenario. However, we know the shared data with one data set. The data set is ready. So once the data set is ready, semaphore is set to 1, mutex initialized to 1, and semaphore write initialized to 1. The writer is enabled, and set a counter integer value to 0. That is read count, the number of readers set to 0. How to implement now? So now what we got over here, so mutex is 1, semaphore value is 1, saying that only one process can enter, and semaphore write initialized to 1. Only one writer can access the data. Only one single writer can access the shared data. And at that time, no reader can be allowed. So that's why read count initialized to 0. How we can implement this? The structure of a writer process. Do, wait, the writer process. Writing is performed. So we give a chance to the write. So what we have in that WRT semaphore, WR, that is initialized to 1. Whenever a semaphore is having a value 1, is nothing but it is writing. Writing is performed. Writing is performed on the buffer. When it is over, it will release a signal. Till it is true, this particular the repetition may occur. That is writer process. On the other side, reader. So now reader, as we know, multiple readers are trying to access the data, but we are trying to avoid it. So initially, one particular process may enter, that is wait of mutex. Initially, mutex value is set to 1. That is what we did here. Mutex initialized to 1. Then read count plus plus. Even read count also we initialize it to 0 because there is no reader. Now, when read count is 1, we can give chances to the right. Saying that reading can be performed. Signal. Reading can be performed. So once reading is over, the read counter should be decremented by 1 because it's in the queue. So the next process may enter, next mutex may enter into this particular critical section, and same thing is repeated until read count becomes 0. So this particular entire cycle repeated because we have n number of readers. Saying that only one reader can read the buffer at a time. So this is how we can solve readers writers problem. And here we can have different variations also, different possibility with this readers writers problem. The first variation is no reader kept waiting unless writer has permission to use shared object. So until writer finishes its job to use the shared object, till that particular period, no reader can given access to the waiting. So there is a first option, first solution, first type of solution. There is no reader kept waiting unless writer has permission to use the shared object. Okay, so that only one reader can be allowed once write up is completed. Second variation solution is once writer is ready, it performs write as early as possible. When writer semaphore write is having the value 1, so now the writer's job is to write it as early as possible. But over here, it may encounter into starvation. Both may have starvation. That is leading to even more variations because only one can be entered right within this. So that's why the other processes may supposed to wait it. So the problem is solved in some of the systems by kernel providing reader writer locks. We can enable reader writer locks also to this scenario so that we can have better solution for readers writers problem. Understood? Readers writers problem. So first one, to perform the shared data set should be ready. Semaphore mutex set to 1, semaphore write set to 1. So whenever the both are set to 1, can perform write operation. Then for the read operation, we are supposed to check whether the counter is more than 1. That is, if it is 1, then it can read, reader can read the data and decrement the read counter and so on. The same cycle should be repeated. So the two possibilities are the no reader kept waiting unless writer has permission to use shared object. Whenever the writer has permission to use shared object, no other processes or no other readers can read the data or process may use the data. That is first part. Second part is whenever the writer is ready, writer's job is to write it as early as possible. So that is the second variation. But in both the cases, it may lead to the starvation because of more number of processes in the queue, waiting queue. So that is readers writers problem. Moving to the dining philosophers problem. So here the scenario is there are 5 philosophers. They are sitting in these chairs, 5 chairs individually. Please follow my cursor. So there are 5 philosophers. They are sitting in the chairs, and they have one bowl of rice. They individually, the individual philosopher will have their own plate, and they have one single chopstick for individual philosopher. So the philosopher job is to think and eat. So now to eat the rice from this particular single bowl, they need to make use of 2 chopsticks. If whenever one particular philosopher made use of one set of chopsticks, then nobody else can access the rice. Right. So that is the scenario now. So now what happens is the philosopher may spend time with the thinking and eating. They won't interact with the neighbors. In general, occasionally they may try to pick up 2 the chopsticks, one at a time, one in one right hand, another on left hand, and to eat from the bowl. But supposed to pick one at a time, and it needs both to eat, both left and right, or 2 chopsticks supposed to need. And once any philosopher grabs those 2 chopsticks, they may release these chopsticks until they may release the chopsticks until till they finish it, or when they finish the rice, then only they may release the chopstick. So that is dining philosopher's problem. Hope you understood. So there are 5 philosophers sitting around this particular single table. They are sitting in their own individual chairs. They have individual plate. So in front of them, they have one bowl of rice. From this, they're supposed to carry the rice to this particular plate, and they're supposed to consume it via using 2 chopsticks. Via using 1 chopsticks, you can't, the philosopher can't eat. But at the same time, or one at a time, they can pick up 1 chopstick. So their job is to eat the rice and think. That's all. So whenever one particular philosopher takes a chopstick, and next immediately, then they'll finish the rice, and then only they may release the chopstick. So this is the scenario. So now philosophers spend their lives thinking and eating. So they won't interact with their neighbors. Occasionally try to pick up 2 chopsticks, one at a time, to eat from the bowl. However, they need both chopsticks to eat, then release both when done. So now relate this particular scenario with our critical section and shared data. So they have shared data, that is rice bowl of rice, that is a data set. And whenever they wanted to pick up a chopstick, it is initialized to 1. Semaphore of chopstick initialized to 1. So this is the scenario right now under this dining philosopher's problem. So how it works? The algorithm is like this. Wait, chopstick 1, and if any one person may take another chopstick, they'll start eating. That is signal. And they'll release only when it is done, only when it reaches 5. Then only they may terminate. Again thinking, and so on. So now what is the scenario? What is the problem with this? Until the rice finishes, others can't have the rice, because the chopsticks are available only for one person at a time. So one chopstick, one for one person at a time. They need another chopstick, 2 chopsticks to eat. So whoever accesses one chopstick first, automatically they'll get another chopstick and they'll start eating. So whenever they finish with the eating, they again move to the think state, that is signaling. and so on. So this is how it is repeated. So now we may have some problem with the semaphores. So the problem with the semaphores are there are signals and wait, as we know, right? So to address this wait mutex and again wait mutex, omitting sometimes uh, release of the particular process out of this mutex, or both the cases, or sometimes the possibility of deadlock also. The same value can be accessed simultaneously, signal and wait, or wait can happen with the same processes, or there is a chance of omitting, or there is a chance of deadlock and starvation. So these are the various problems may occur with the semaphores. To have a proper solution under this one, we suppose need a monitor. So using this monitor, it will identify incorrect use of semaphores operations. So it is nothing but an abstract, it is a data type. So we'll see how it is. It is a high level abstraction. The monitors are a high level abstraction that provides a convenient and effective mechanism for process synchronization. There is a high level abstraction. On the other hand, data hiding. So it provides convenient and effective mechanism for process synchronization. So it will have an abstract data type so that internal variables only accessible by code within the procedure. Only one process may be active within the monitor at a time, but it is not powerful enough to model some synchronization schemes. So we'll see how it works. So each monitor is nothing but it will have some data type in it. Those data types are abstract data types so that we can hide the code within the procedure itself. So whatever we can write the procedure within this, that is available only for this particular procedure only. So only one process may be active within the monitor at a time. So now we have an entry queue. So shared data, we have number of operations, of initialization code. So now this is the schematic representation for a monitor. So shared data through this particular shared data, this is considered as a procedure. Procedure will have shared data. Procedure will have set of operations and it will have a set of codes as well. So the entry queue will look after this particular shared data. So only one can be accessed. One particular part can be accessed under this particular scenario. Now you understood? Getting? So in general, monitor are nothing but it is a type, so nothing but abstract data type. It includes a set of programmer defined operations that are provided for both the mutual exclusion within the monitor. So monitor type also declares a name and its own variables, shared variables, and it will have a dedicated procedures as well. It will have its own data, its own abstract data, its own procedures, set of values, right? So these are the possibilities with the monitors. So now to have a powerful synchronization scenario, we are supposed to follow some set of schemes with some conditions. So condition XY. So using this XY, two operations can be performed. Two operations on a condition variable. So one is wait and signal. Wait and signal. So that is X dot wait. That is a process that invokes the operation is suspended until X dot signal has been read. On the other side, signal resumes one of processes, if any, that invoked wait. That means two operations we can set up under this criteria. So one is wait and signal. The first operation, the wait operation, is nothing but the process that invokes the operation is suspended until signal arrives. On the other hand, signal resumes one of processes that is invoked by wait. So this is a situation with the condition variables. So now when we have these two, X and Y, so X job is to invoke the operation that is suspended until X dot signal. So now see this diagram. Here you can see using X and Y, we are trying to retrieve the data from this shared memory, shared data. So X is nothing but its own process that invokes the operation that is suspended until X dot signal. So X will keep on continuing with the shared data until it encounters signal. So whenever it reaches signal, automatically it moves to the next one, that is Y, and so on. Same thing is repeated, that is monitored with condition variables. So we may have different choices also. That is, if process P invokes a signal with the Q in wait, that is Q is resumed, then P must wait. Because P already entered into the queue and it is having the signal, so that P is supposed to wait. So now in this scenario, the options may include signal and wait and signal and continue. Signal and wait, the process P waits until Q leaves the monitor or waits for another condition. So we have P1 and P2, say P1 and P2. If P1 is already in the queue, then it will wait. The other P2 may wait until P1 completes its turn. And then signal and continue. The queue waits until P leaves the monitor or waits for another condition. Supposed to wait for the previous process to leave the monitor. But in both the cases, in both these possibilities, they have both pros and cons. That is, language implementer can be decided. Implementer can decide the possibility with this, and monitor is implemented in concurrent Pascal compromising. P executing signal immediately leaves the monitor and Q is resumed. So that is one after the other. One after the other, it will take into consideration. So this can be implemented in different languages like Mesa, C#, Java, etc. Can implement that. So now we saw the dining philosopher problem. So how to give a solution using this monitor for dining philosopher problem. So that is nothing but deadlock free solution. Over here, we are trying to impose a restriction that a philosopher may pick up the chopsticks only if both are available. Only if both are available. So we'll see how it can be implemented. So we have a monitor, dining philosophers, enumerated variable, thinking, hungry, and eating. So this is repeated again and again. Now, void pickup. So pickup is the first, according to the list, it is thinking, right? Then void pickup int I, state of I equal to hungry, moves to the hungry state. Then, so that particular scenario move to the test. Move to the test. What we have in the test? Test, that is, if state of I plus 4 model 5, then it is eating. That means both are true, then it's supposed to eat. Otherwise send the signal. So whenever it got both the chopsticks, it's supposed to start eating and continue the eating until it gets the signal from the other side. Now, in this scenario, supposed to initialize the set of code for thinking, initialize the code for hungry, initialize the code for eating also. So now one by one, supposed to execute in a rotation base. So is how we can implement monitor for our dining philosopher problem. Any other clarification on this? Doubt or clarification? So we make use of this test when both hungry and whether it obtained both chopsticks. supposed to wait it until it gets the, once it is done, move to the signal. And we can give a other solution, like each philosopher invokes the operations pick up and put down in the following sequence. Initially supposed to pick up, then eat, then put down. Pick up, eat, put down. So this is a scenario. Over here, no deadlock will occur, but starvation may possible, because whenever a particular process enters into this one, pick up, automatically it moves to the next stage, that is eat, then only it moves to the put down stage. So till here, for these three stages, the other process is supposed to wait it. Right, so there is starvation. There is no deadlock, it is starvation. So using semaphores, you can implement monitors. So with respect to semaphore, it should be 1 initially, and each procedure F will be replaced by this particular scenario, that is recursive procedure. So mutual exclusion within a monitor can be ensured within a monitor, because whenever a particular monitor has been trying to enter into the scenario, then it will get the permission to access the critical section for only for one particular mutex or one particular procedure. Then if the condition is over, if the condition improves, saying that that particular process may finish its execution, then the rest of the part will come into picture one by one under the queue. That is what it says. And another possibility is using condition variables, that is to set the counter, nothing but bound, time bound, supposed to make use of count to increment the counter, and on the other hand it is decrement also. Whenever a particular process wanted to have a data under critical section, then it will take increment the count and will get the data. On the other hand, sometimes the other side wanted to have the data, then we are supposed to decrement it and move to the queue must be updated. That is how it works. So now whenever we can resume the processes within a monitor, we may make use of different scheduling algorithms like FCFS or other things. But in general, FCFS, first come first serve, frequently not adequate. We may make use of conditional wait instead of this FCFS. Because while setting up, after providing different priorities for each of the processes, we can just maintain priority number along with their process ID. Process with the lowest number, that is highest priority, is scheduled next. So by considering this as in mind, so we can go with the conditional wait for the processes within the monitors. This is how we can implement it. So monitor resource allocator, Boolean busy. So it's supposed to acquire a particular process. That is, when it acquires, others will get a busy and it will execute in the critical section. And once it is done, it will release. Then it moves to the next process and so on. This is how the single resource allocation may takes place. So that completes the process synchronization. So we follow different approaches: critical section, and then readers, writers, producer, consumer, and dining philosophers. So these are the possibilities with the process synchronization. So if you have any clarification, please get back. Thank you. Thank you for the session.